I used to think if we knew better, somehow we would do better, but still there's too much hate working in the world today. So I read books to make my mind a little stronger, meditate and try to pray a little longer, but love without action is just a dream state. I'm so tired of sleepwalking, pushing aside nightmares we don't wanna see. Good morning, America, it's time to wake up. Alarm clocks have rung, the world needs our love. Good morning, America. Another news flash, there's a heart that needs healing. Still we pay no mind to human feeling. Children are starving, policy alarming. Pour that in your coffee cup. I'm so tired of sleepwalking, pushing aside nightmares we don't wanna see. Good morning, America, it's time to wake up. Alarm clocks have rung, the world needs our love. Good morning, America. Good morning, America, it's time to wake up. Alarm clocks have rung, the world needs our love. Good morning, America. Close your eyes, picture a world like paradise. Heaven on earth, it's our divine journey to see this through. Close your eyes, picture a world like paradise. Heaven on earth, it's our divine journey to see this through. Good morning, America, it's time to wake up. Alarm clocks have rung, the world needs our love. Good morning, America. Good morning, America, it's time to wake up. Alarm clocks have rung, the world needs our love. Good morning, America.
Hello, and welcome to Unity of Las Vegas. My name is Jim Lee, and I'm so excited about this day. It's a special day. Not only is this the day that the Lord has made, we have a very special guest. Some of you may know her, Dr. Rima Bonario, and she'll be doing the talk and the meditation. But before we get into that, let's get ourselves centered and ready for a fabulous day. First of all, with Michelle leading us in I Came Here to Be, and then Don will center us with the prayer.
Come on.
I came here to be, I came here to be. Good morning and happy Sunday. My name is Donald Fouts, and I am honored to be prayer chaplain for Unity of Las Vegas. As prayer chaplain, I find that my role is to be a cheerleader for individuals' success, that is your success, and for our success as human beings. All of humanity driving together as one. And so we want to start this prayer session with the daily word. If you're familiar with the Unity's daily word, you will know what I'm talking about. The day's word is love. And it says, I am a loving presence to everyone I meet. So take that in, find your heart in this moment. It has been said that the world needs more love. The truth is that all the love the world could ever need is already present everywhere, because God is love and God is present everywhere. Created in God's image, I am divine love in human expression. I know that love is much more than a positive feeling. Divine love is the energy of oneness itself. As I remain centered in divine love, I know oneness in God with all people, including those who are dear to me and those I've never met. Divine love helps me see good everywhere and in everyone. I look beyond conflict and limitation and find the good that is always mine to discover. And from John 4:7, Beloved, let us love one another because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. And as we begin to decrease our social distancing in Las Vegas and around the United States, even around the world, soon social distancing will become a thing of the past. But we are not there yet. So let's pray together for wisdom. So if you'll close your eyes and come into breath awareness, take this prayer as your own. Heavenly Father, Mother God, we bring peace to this moment. In the name of love, we accept your guidance, your wisdom to wash over us now and to continue to be with us moment to moment. We accept that your voice of wisdom is easily heard as we let go of our personal agendas and give into the agenda of peace, abundance, and love. And there is nothing anywhere ever that can keep us from this wisdom and this strength and your love. Thank you, God, that this is so. Amen.
Thank you, Don, for your prayer. Always good to hear you. And so now we have a special guest, Dr. Rima Bonario. She is a dream weaver, soul coach, and wild heart healer. She is profound in several areas, and she teaches personal sovereignty. Rima is the founder of the Sisterhood of Anointing Priestesses. Also, she's the co-founder of the Q Effect that some of you have been exposed to, and some of you will be exposed to her because she'll be back in a couple of months doing wonderful shadow work. And that's how I've gotten to know her. The leadership team has an opportunity to experience her. And so now you get a chance to experience Dr. Rima Bonario. She's very good. Open up your minds. open up your hearts to our special guest.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Rima Bonario, and I'm so delighted to be with you here this Sunday morning. And I want to just thank Jim and Lisa for inviting me to share with you today. It's my pleasure to be with you. I'd like to start by telling you a story about a wise king, or a king who became wise, as is the case in this story. So our king had a son, and as his son was growing older, he wanted to be able to leave him with a legacy of wisdom. So he had this idea. He had a beautiful ring with a stone, and he wanted to place on a special piece of paper a short phrase that would fit under that stone so he could leave it to his son. And his son could then use that phrase in a time where he might find himself in a place of despair. And so he went to his sages of the court and all of his theologians, and he asked them to come up with a phrase, a short phrase that would fit on a paper that he could put in this ring. But all of his wise counselors were stumped because they were used to writing very long treatises, and they didn't really have any thoughts about how to contain a small nugget of wisdom that would be able to fit on a piece of paper and go in the ring. So the king retired to his bedchambers that evening, feeling just distraught and having given up on his idea, when a servant of his that had been serving the castle for a long time said to him, "My lord, I am not a wise man, but as you know, I've worked here for many, many years, and I've seen many people come and go, including some great sages and mystics. And I have such a phrase that was given to me by one of these mystics that could work for your ring. And I'd like to give it to you, but the only caveat is I want to write it on the paper myself, and you'll have to promise not to look at it until you might need it." Well, the king agreed, and the servant did exactly that, and the ring was made. Several years later, the kingdom fell under attack by some invading forces, and they were caught by surprise. So the king had been rousted out of the castle and was riding hard to get away from his enemies. And he was coming to the end of his lands where there was a great cliff. And he was thinking to himself, is this the way it's going to end? And he jumped off his horse and was hiding in the bushes. And as he could hear the hoofbeats of the enemy approaching, he was in great despair, and he remembered the ring. So he pulled out the piece of paper, and on the piece of paper it said, "This too shall pass." And a great calm came over the king, and everything quieted, and he was able to drop into his heart. And as he stayed in that place, the enemy just rode on by, and he was able to get back on his horse, go back to his castle and collect all of his armies, reassemble them, and mount a defense and win his territory back for his people. And as they were in a time of celebrating this return and the end of this war and all of the great revelry associated with that, the servant walked up to the king and whispered in his ear, "My lord, read the paper under the stone in your ring." And the king said, Why? I'm not in despair. I'm not distraught. There's no crisis any longer. We are in a place of celebration. And the servant said, "My lord, read the paper." And so he pulled it out again and he read the words, "This too shall pass." And just like before, everything went quiet. And he felt a great calm as he went into his heart. And he received the wisdom of this teaching at a very deep level. And so this is the time where we want to remember this phrase. We are living in unprecedented times where we're all being asked to do difficult things and be in a place of uncertainty. And we want to keep in mind this notion that this too shall pass. For many of us, especially in Western culture, it seems a lot easier it seems as though if we're doing it right, the kind of life we're going to live is all good all the time. No difficulties, no challenges, as though we're living from mountain peak to mountain peak without ever having to traverse the valley below. But life doesn't really work like that. In fact, if all we had was peak, it would be flat and we would be on a plateau and there would be no mountains and no valleys. And if you think about how life operates, even if you think about the beating of your heart, we have a heartbeat and then we have a space, and then it beats again, and then there's a rest and another beat and a rest. And if you look at that on an EKG printout, it sort of looks like peaks and valleys. And if we were to go into that place of flat line, that means we're dead. And in fact, not being in relationship to life as a series of peaks and valleys and wanting instead for it to always be smooth doesn't lead us to the place of great aliveness. It's really more about being in a place of numbing or death. And so I invite you to consider your relationship to the peaks and valleys of life. It's as though we're being invited to learn to love the ride, to learn to love the journey, whether we're on the way up, we're at the summit at the very top, or we're on our way down toward a valley, or even in the darkest place below. As long as we are aware that we can be in a loving relationship with this journey, we're likely to have a better experience. But exactly how do you do that? I mean, that's quite challenging. And for me, one of the things that's been a key around understanding how to love the journey is to recognize that this journey is filled with temporal things. This physical life that we live, this material life that we live, is all temporary. Everything here is temporal. Everything is coming into existence or going out of existence, including us, including our bodies. And so when we choose to attach our sense of well-being and our sense of self to things that are temporary, what we're doing is actually signing up for a life of deep anxiety. What we may want to do instead, and I believe the reason that we come to a place like Unity and we're on the spiritual path, is because we recognize that we need to attach our sense of self to something that is outside of the material world, something that is ever present, that is eternal, that is infinite. And that is spirit. That is the energy of principle and of the divine. And so when we can connect ourselves and our sense of well-being and worth to that which in us is divine, that within us which is outside of space and time, we're likely to experience much less stress and much less fear, and also be in a place of trust as we move through life. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to experience the very human emotions that come when we have loss. We do enjoy the temporal world. That's the point of being here, isn't it? We enjoy being in love with other people. We enjoy having experiences that are meaningful to us. And loving goes hand in hand with loss. It's almost as though they're twin flames, that we cannot love deeply without also feeling a sense of loss when that which we love moves on. And that's true for people, for our beloved pets, for even our jobs or our homes, or the things that we think of in life as our way of living together in community. And some of that's not available to us right now. So we may be experiencing a real sense of loss around not being able to spend time with our friends and our loved ones and our family members. But there is a difference between getting stuck in a state of being that we call grief, or being in the act of mourning. We want to mourn our losses. Mourning our losses is a way we pay tribute to the love that we shared. But mourning has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there's a way for us to be in the act of mourning without being completely engulfed in the state of grief. I like to think about this as life being a river that is flowing. And we are riding in a boat on that river. And the path before us is winding, and sometimes we can see a little bit ahead, and sometimes we can't see very far ahead at all. And sometimes we'll see something on the riverbank that we think looks really great. And so we sort of head over to the riverbank and pull our canoe out of the water and set up camp. And we'll really, I mean, I've done this in my life many times, found places or people or relationships or jobs that felt really, really fulfilling. And I've spent a lot of time and energy investing in those. And then there are times when I notice myself missing the experience of being on the river and being in flow. And so sometimes we need to leave camp and get back in the river and be in that state of flow. As Native Americans tell us, though, you can never step into the same river twice, because while we were sitting and in a place of flow, of rest and enjoying a particular experience of life, the river of life has been going. And so wherever you step into that river will be radically different. And one of the things that causes us great difficulty and great sorrow is when we get attached to a particular form or a particular experience of life. It's as though we get back in the boat and start paddling down the river, and we start to complain about the scenery. Well, it's not as nice as the last place we saw, or I don't like this particular kind of forest, or where did the prairies go? I prefer the prairies, or I prefer the mountains. Whatever the case might be, we get fixated on a particular view. And when we get stuck in a particular view, we find ourselves then falling into an illusion of sorts, because that is no longer what is present for us. We're stuck in the past, wishing we had something that we've had before, or we might also be worrying about the future, and that's not present for us right now either. One of my favorite stories when I was younger that Disney put out was Mary Poppins, and I loved her magical way of doing things. And I remember very vividly the scene where they're in the park and there are these beautiful chalk drawings that have been made on the sidewalk, and Bert and Mary and the children do this amazing thing of being able to jump into these beautiful pictures that have been created, and they have this wonderful magical time. But then they need to return back to the real world. So they exit the pictures. And sometimes we have trouble with that experience where it's as though our memories, our very treasured memories, are places like these pictures where we jump into them and can lose ourselves in the past. And we are no longer in relationship to what is, which is where all the magic really happens, which is where our power is. And so if we get stuck and trapped in one of these old photographs of our previous life experience, whether that's wounding from our childhood or a phrase that was unkind that somebody said to us that keeps reverberating around in our mind and our heart, whether it's a way of being we took on because we got conditioned out of fear from experiences that didn't go well for us in the past. These are all ways we get stuck in these old photographs, if you will. And what we want to do is come out of those photographs and get back into the stream of life, get back into the reality of what's here, and not try to hold too tightly to any particular experience, to not hold too tightly to a job or a home or even relationships. One of the things that helps us most as human beings, if we are on the spiritual path, is when we find ourselves being called to master loving without possessing. There's a way to be in love without possessing. In fact, in the Native American language, they had no word for ownership because it didn't make sense for them to think about owning a piece of land. How do you own a piece of the earth? This is here for all of us. The earth is alive and a being, and she provides for us, and we steward her and take care of her and in relationship with her without seeking to own it. And this kind of ownership becomes a bit of a trap for us as human beings. because it leads us into this illusion that we have control over what is present in our life at any given time. And we forget that it's temporal and temporary. It's certainly uncomfortable when we are first exploring this idea of letting go of control or letting go of possessing certain outcomes. I mean, that's why we made up the illusion in the first place. But it is difficult for us to be in true trust if we are not holding lightly that which is a part of our life. And this time of holy pause that we have been given has really been an opportunity for us to see very clearly, not only as individuals, but as a culture, what exactly we have gotten very attached to. What is it we're trying to control? What have we devoted our lives to, perhaps even very unconsciously? And so what we're noticing are all the things that we've attached ourselves to that are temporary and that being without can feel difficult. And so this is an invitation to think about how you can devote yourself actually to your connection to spirit, to your connection to your own soul, that which lives outside of space and time. And I know that's why we're part of the Unity movement to begin with, is that we have a desire to connect with and know life through the view of that which is of spirit, of the divine within us. And so I have 4 steps that I want to share with you that I use in my own life to help me stay in this place of being devoted to a life through the lens of walking as the divine on earth. And the first step is what a great metaphysician, Ernest Holmes, called courting wisdom. And it's all about being in a daily practice of putting your spiritual life first, of being devoted to and having a devotional practice to connecting with your soul and your spirit. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you. This has not been easy for me. I've been a part of Unity for coming up on 25 years, and I've had varying degrees of success with different types of spiritual practices. And I've had periods in my life where I've been more devoted than other periods in my life. And recently, over the last several years, I've really been clear that it's so important to have this practice in the mornings as a way of starting my day, but it has not been easy. I mean, I would constantly feel this pressure, like, how do I have time to sit in a meditation practice or to light the candles on my altar, be in prayer, when email is calling me? And, you know, if I'm not careful and I look at my phone first thing, then there's all kinds of messages to return. There's business that's needed. There's my family to take care of, children to get to school, food to be prepared. And I would have this constant sort of experience of wanting to make time for my practice in the morning and feeling like I just couldn't carve out the time to do it. So I started to work on a way of helping myself with this. And the first step was I would put my spiritual practice on my to-do list. And at least then I got to it on a daily basis. But I was getting to it really because I was motivated to be able to check that off my to-do list. You know that feeling you get when you check something off your list that's done. And so I would go through it rather with great rote behavior, you know, without much consciousness. I like to use these beautiful anointing oils as a way of getting into my spiritual practice. And so I would, you know, just put them on, boom, 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 and then, okay, check mark, that's done. Or if it was tending to my altar, whatever it might be, sitting in quiet time. For me, I also had to put things on that list like drinking water and eating food, because this is how all-consuming my work could be for me at times. So after doing that for a while, one of the things that began to happen was I was seeing the benefit of it, and I wanted to create more space. And the beauty of this time of holy pause for me has been that not only have I been able to make more space for that early practice, but it's become something that's been so deeply ingrained in me now. As I began to take time in the mornings, what I noticed is that my day went completely differently on the day that I would do my practice. I wasn't very consistent but I could see there was a difference. And as we've been in this time of slowing down, I've been able to become incredibly consistent now. And it feels to me now in a completely different way that not only is it important for me to do it every day, but there literally is not time for me to do anything else until I have done my personal practice in the morning. That includes, I like to bathe, do holy bathing. I put oils in the water there as well, is another way for me to really connect. Sometimes I will use crystals in my bath even. And what's beautiful about that is I can get in the bath and there's literally nothing else you can do in there but just be focused on connecting with the divine within. I'll put on some very special spiritual music or sometimes some guided meditation. And that has become such a source of comfort for me, being in that experience. Whatever it might be for you, what's important is that you actually take that time to develop a devotional relationship with your practice so that you're experiencing the divine in that way. And what's been so exciting to see is that I'm actually getting more done in half the time because I'm setting myself and my inner container, I'm setting that up first, being in devotion to that first before I move into the work. And so instead of doing busy work, I'm doing soul work, and I'm able to access incredible guidance as to where I need to invest my time and energy throughout the day. It's a radically different place. I highly encourage you to create some kind of morning practice. The second step is to be able to be in a place of compassion for yourself when you forget to do your spiritual practice. And this is so important because we're human beings and we are going to make mistakes and we are going to have times when we, even in our best effort, we fall short. And so being able to be compassionate with yourself is critical. And knowing that you're going to have some of those inner critic thoughts. I mean, that's just, again, a part of being human. That's the shadow part of us that comes up and wants to tell us terrible things about ourselves, or that actually keeps us from moving into our practice because we don't want things to get too good. That's even a more hidden shadow sometimes where we're actually afraid of success. And so it's so important to recognize that doubt is a natural part of the process. When you are doing your best to stay in principle and to stay connected to your soul and connected to the divine, there are still going to be times when you will feel doubt creep in. It's so important in those moments to be compassionate with yourself when you have fear, when you're wondering what's next, when you see something that triggers fear in you, to really bring yourself a wonderful warm blanket of compassion to support you in that. Recently, I had the honor of taking your leadership team through the Q Effect. And the Q Effect is a really powerful 21-day practice that supports people in learning how to be compassionate with ourselves when we notice that we're in shadow. And also to have a way of moving ourselves gently out of that dark place and into a place of more light and integrity and compassion and love. I want to tell you a little story about this practice and how it can work. This story is about a gentleman who lived in a village in Asia, and he had a son born to the family, and his son was very curious and precocious, and the villagers all came to him and said, "Isn't it wonderful that you have a son who is so curious and so bright?" And the gentleman replied, "We shall see." And years later, he was out on his own and he went missing. He was curious and wandered off. And the villagers came to console the man and said, "Oh, how terrible. Your son is so curious." And he ran off. And the gentleman said, "We shall see." And several days passed, and his son returned home, and he had found a wild horse and tamed the horse and brought it to work on the farm. And the villagers came out to celebrate and said to the man, "How fortunate that your son found this wild horse and brought it home." And the gentleman said, "We shall see." A year later, his son was riding the horse and fell from the horse and broke his leg. And the villagers came again to lament and say, how terrible this has happened to your son. And the gentleman said, we shall see. And later that month, the government came through with the army announcing there was a war, and they were conscripting young men to go into the army. But because his son had a broken leg, he was unable to go to war. And so here again, the gentleman had the chance to say, to see how this had actually worked in his favor, as everybody celebrated that his son was able to stay. And so there are times when we're not as able to say, we shall see, when things aren't going well. In fact, a lot of the times what we say instead is, this really sucks. This really stinks. I don't like this. And that's normal as well. So we want to be compassionate with ourselves when we're having a hard time saying, we shall see, and suspending our judgment about whether something will be good in the long run or not good in the long. We're getting lots of practice right now with the opportunity to reserve judgment about what is the pathway forward and what will be good and what won't be good, aren't we? So step 3 is to actually choose to become curious instead of passing judgment, to allow yourself to be filled with wonder and awe as you are in the journey. And sometimes we have to be in a place of practice with this. If you think about opera singers who've made it to the Metropolitan Opera, you can imagine how many notes have they sung in their lifetime in order to get to that place of mastery. Or athletes, how many free throws have they taken? How many times have they swung at bat in order to become their very, very best? A marathon runner, how many steps have they taken before they're able to actually run a marathon with all their training? And so life forms a training ground for us, an opportunity for us to practice being in curiosity and to know that whatever outcome we're having in our life is actually an outcome based on the practice that we've done up until now. So however well you can sing, or however far you can run, or however well you can throw free throws in the basket is a function of all the training you've done up till today in the past. What you do today is what makes tomorrow come forward, is what makes our new life. And so what we choose today is so essential. And if we can stay in a place of curiosity rather than judging something as good or bad and be in that practice, we're much more likely to have an enjoyable ride of life. The final step is active faith and activating our faith. So I define faith as an deep internal knowing combined with patience. Faith only makes sense when we have experienced moments of doubt and we're in a time of practice and we're still needing to wait for what is the good we know is coming to appear. But that's all part of the game. That's all part of what we've signed up for when we come here to be part of this life experience. But the beautiful thing about this is that we really don't have to be passive in our experience of using our faith. We can have a very active faith. One of my teachers describes manifestation as this formula. She says, desire plus non-resistance equals manifestation. So it's normal for us to desire and to want to have particular outcomes in life. But we have to be in a place of non-resistance around receiving that outcome in order for it to come into our life. And non-resistance can be really hard. I have had my own challenges with that. And I've been so blessed to have many wonderful teachers in my life. And one of them gave me a powerful tool that I use to be in non-resistance. And she calls it Planet Fill in the Blank with your name. So for me, that's Planet Rima. And on Planet Rima, I get to make up all the rules. I get to decide exactly how it looks. I get to have pink clouds and purple houses if I like. Whatever it is I want on Planet Rima is what I get to have. And so when I feel myself in a place of longing or wishing for something to be other than it is now, and knowing that the way it is now is an outcome of past consciousness, Rather than worrying and staying stuck in that past consciousness, I just put it on planet Rima. I close my eyes and I imagine with great vivid detail how that's going to look and feel as I'm living that truth already on planet Rima. And that I'm able to see that there's only time between that reality and the one I'm experiencing now. So I encourage you to get in relationship to your own planet. What would you put on that planet? How would it look? How would it feel as you live on that place where you get to create it exactly the way you would like for it to be? If that tool doesn't fit for you, there's another one that people often use called the God box, where they just write out whatever their worry or concern is, or whatever their desire or their wish is, and they put it in the God box and then let it go and leave it for the divine to move in their lives. So this is a great way that we can let go of outcomes and to be in the place of enjoying whether we're heading up the hill or down the hill, whether we're at the peak or the valley, whatever the case might be, and to let go of seeing it as a problem to be solved. There is no problem to be solved. We can just be love, and trust. And when we're able to do that, that is how we have faith in action. And the fastest way to bring this forward is in our time of faith, we begin looking for the evidence of that good that we are calling forth into our lives. And we take time to write that evidence down, to notice it, to be in relationship with all that is wonderful and good that we see in the world, that we see in our lives, that we see within ourselves. That keeps us in a place of active faith while we're waiting for some of the other things we might be looking forward to manifesting to appear. So once again, the 4 steps are courting wisdom through a daily devotional practice, being compassionate with yourself when doubt appears and judgment appears, becoming curious and staying in flow, staying in the river and wondering what's next, and then having active faith and focusing on the evidence. And so my belief and my experience is that when we do these things, the most exquisite guidance becomes available to us, and our path is illuminated with the twinkling lights of divine love. And that is my wish for you. God bless. And so let us come together and drop within and move into our meditation time. And as we do so, I invite you to allow these words to be your words. I have come here to be faith-filled. The power of faith can change everything, for faith is assured of its victory. Faith operates in the now, while hope yearns for a future that may or may not appear. Faith creates reality through its power of conviction, regardless of appearances. When you are tempted to hope, reach instead for faith and know that miracles and wonders really never do cease. And so we take time in our hearts to activate our faith, to know with assurance that what we are creating today comes forward tomorrow, that we are cared for, that all is well. We know that Spirit is moving in and through and as us each day as we show up in our lives and in this world for ourselves and for others. We are curious, we court wisdom, we are devoted to our practice, and we are faith-filled. And as we take a few moments in the silence to connect with Spirit, we feel the activity of our faith coming alive in this now moment. And so, with an act of faith, with a heart full of compassion, we are guided along this winding path of life, and we are led forward toward a future that fulfills our divine purpose, that fulfills the call to love. And so it is.
Thank you, Rima, for giving us a wonderful service today with your lesson in meditation. And your teaching, Rima, is really for us because we've been talking about the way forward for the past few months. You have given us now ways to start off our day, insights that we can include in our internal process so that we can move forward. Thanks again. And so because of you, each and every one of you, Unity of Las Vegas is moving forward. Thanks to your tithes and offerings, not only are we here now, but we're established ourselves to be here even in the future. So continue with your generosity. We're having multiple avenues. You can tune in to Facebook, hit the donate button, our website. Also, you can mail the check. And so as you are preparing, we have music for you. And I love it. Jamie Hosmer is here, and he'll be singing a song that I firmly believe. It is entitled, Love is Always the Answer. I love that.
Flowing river that will never run dry. The more you drink from the water, its power is magnified. It's been said 1,000 times, 1,000 different ways. Though we try to complicate it, the simple truth remains. The simple truth remains. Love is always the answer. That's never gonna change. It's always the answer, because love will conquer. Oh, love is the answer. Take a walk to the river's edge. Sink your hand in slow. Raise the cool water to your lips. Watch the ripples grow. Oh, the more you give, the more you get. A never-ending stream. Is it too simple to understand exactly what this means? Don't you understand what this means? Oh, love is always the answer. That's never gonna change. It's always the answer, because love will conquer. Oh, anytime you feel lost and out of touch,
Well, thank you for being with us here today. Love is always the answer. And so as we wrap it up and move forward into our week, of course, we take the prayer for protection, because not only is this a declaration, but it's an affirmation of the truth. Together, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, wherever we may be, God is there, and all is well. Have a blessed week.